Hey guys, Wheelie here. Today I'm going to show you how to make my Triptych Scarf. It's got all the good things, super straight edges, a simple 2-row repeating pattern, and this lovely puffy squishy stitch which I've always called a triptych. I did a last minute Google before finishing this video and it turns out that everyone else calls it a triad stitch. I've been online with my crochet for a couple of years now, but I still sometimes find that I've been calling things by my own uniquely quirky names because I'm in a bit of a vacuum, so you'll have to excuse me, but the triad stitch is called the triptych stitch in wheelie crochet language, and I've called it that through this whole video and even named the pattern after it. Feel free to laugh at me in the comments, or maybe tell me I'm not alone. Do you have any of your own weird crochet terms? I crocheted this scarf with some vibrantly colourful panda crypto yarn, and I just love how it's turned out. It looks like I've carefully laid out each colour change, but it just happened. But because the triptych stitches give this scarf so much lovely texture, you don't need a fancy yarn for this one. This pattern looks great in a solid colour yarn too. It works well with both 8-ply and worsted weight. I haven't tested it with anything heavier, but for those of you who actually live in a cold climate and want a warmer scarf, I'd be super interested to see how it would turn out. As well as your yarn, you're going to need a pair of scissors, a single stitch marker, a needle for sewing in your tails, and your hook. If you're not sure what hook size to use, I recommend you just have a look at your yarn label. You'll find somewhere on your yarn label something that looks a bit like this. If you're lucky, it'll tell you exactly which crochet hook to use, but most of the time yarn labels just tell you which knitting needle to use, and you can convert that straight to a hook. So this says 4mm needles. I've used a 4mm hook. When you're all set up, let's get going. Grab your yarn and your hook, and we'll start by putting a slip knot on the hook. We're going to start with a chain of 24. If you want your scarf to be a little wider or a little slimmer, you can just add or subtract another 2 chains. When you've got your starting chain ready, we're going to work single crochets into this. Now I prefer to work into the back of my chain. You may be familiar with working into the front of your chain, where you insert your hook and catch one loop like that. What I'd like you to do is turn your chain over so that you can see the shape of the back of the chain, which has little lines running down the back of it, or if you turn it to the side, you can see that it has these little bumps. What we're going to do is insert the hook into a bump like that, and what that'll do is give you a nice flat base to the bottom of your scarf. So we're going to start in the second bump from the hook. So not counting the loop on the hook, that's the first bump, and that's the second, and that's where we're going to insert the hook, and then we're going to single crochet. Yarn over, pull through to pull up a loop. There are 2 loops on the hook, yarn over, pull through 2. And that's the first single crochet. I want you to keep doing that all the way down the chain, working into these back bumps. If you find it a little bit fiddly working into the back bumps, you can work into the chain in the normal old boring way. It won't make a huge amount of difference. It just takes away that flat edge that you get from working into the back bumps, which I quite like. The end of this row, you're going to have 23 single crochets, and you'll know you're on the last one when you get to a stitch with a little knot at the end of it. Okay, so that is the first row of the scarf complete. I have 23 single crochets. For row 2, it's actually exactly the same. We're going to work 23 single crochets. So we're going to chain 1 and turn. And I want you to pay attention to the way I'm turning. Instead of folding it over like a book, like that, I'm going to fold it under, like that. And that's just going to give us a really neat edge to it. If you're unsure about where to work the first stitch of the round, turn your work so you can see this V shape at the top of the stitches. And not counting the loop on the hook, we're going to count back 1, which is the chain 1 we just did, and 2, which is the top of the next stitch. I'm going to insert my hook under that V of the second, yarn over and pull up a loop, 2 loops on the hook, yarn over and pull through 2. So that's the first single crochet of the row, and we're just going to put 1 single crochet in each all the way across. So we'll have 23 single crochets in row 2 as well. I'll meet you at the end of the row to show you the beginning of row 3. To start row 3, I want you to turn your work over, taking this end and taking it over that way to turn it. What that does is it just places your working yarn at the back of your work rather than in front, which is what we want to start the triptych rows of the pattern. So for the triptych rows of the pattern, you have a choice. If you are just starting with crochet, this pattern is achievable, but you'll need to do the easier version, which is to start your rows with a chain. And you're going to start by chaining 3, 1, 2, 3, which stands in for the first double crochet of the row. Grab yourself a stitch marker and mark that 3rd chain, because that is going to be the top of your double crochet. And then what you're going to do is chain 1, which is a chain, so it's not part of this pretend double crochet at the beginning of the row. And then we're going to get into the pattern. For those of you who would like to try the slightly harder method, which gives you super straight edges, I'm going to take that out and show you how to do that. So what we're going to do to get super straight edges is work an alternative starting double crochet. And with this pattern, the one that works best is the sort of twisted starting double crochet, where you pull up a loop and you pull it up so it's about as high as a double crochet usually is. Pop your finger on top of that yarn and wrap it around your hook. So I've sort of got 2 loops on my hook, but I'm holding them in place. Then insert your hook in the first V, going under that. So I've got the loops that I'm holding in place, and I've got that V on top of my hook. I'm going to yarn over and pull up a loop. So now I have 3 loops on my hook, which I'm holding in place. I'm going to yarn over and pull through 2 of them. Then I can let go and yarn over and pull through 2 to finish the double crochet. And when you look at this from above, there's something that looks almost like a V, but it's sort of a bit smushy and weird looking. If you're not familiar with this stitch, I suggest you grab that handy old stitch marker and mark the V of the stitch so it's easy to find when you come back around. So now we're going to chain 1, and we're up to the same point as the people who started with a chain standing in for their first double crochet. Now we can get into the triptych pattern. So triptychs are worked over 3 stitches. So we're going to be working our next stitch over this, this and this stitch, or from above, the next 3 empty stitches. You start by yarning over, inserting the hook under the V of that first stitch. So I've got 2 loops on my hook back here and the top of the stitch I'm working into. I'm going to yarn over and I'm going to pull up a loop and I'm going to pull it up really high. So I'm pulling it up to about the height of a double crochet. And then I'm going to yarn over again and I'm going to insert my hook into the next V. You may find it helps you when you're first doing this stitch to pop your finger on top of that to hold it in place. Insert your hook. So back here I have a lot on my hook. I've got 1, 2, 3, 4 plus the top of the stitch, and I'm going to yarn over and pull up another. So now I have 5 loops on my hook. I'm going to put my finger on top of them again and I'm going to insert into the next stitch along. Yarn over, insert into the next stitch along. So now I have 6 loops on my hook back here plus the top of the stitch. Yarn over and pull up a loop, still pulling it up high, and I've got 2, 4, 6 loops on my hook, 7 loops on my hook, and I'm going to yarn over and pull through 6 of them. So all but this last loop here. Now I have 2 loops on my hook. I'm going to yarn over and pull through 2. And that is a triptych stitch. I really rather like them. Then we're going to chain 1 and we're going to work another triptych stitch. So after that first stitch of the row, your triptych stitches are always going to start in the stitch that you finished in. So this stitch here is where I'm going to begin. So I'll insert my hook first there, and then in the first empty stitch, and then in the next empty stitch. So yarn over and insert the hook. There are 2 loops on the hook plus the top of the stitch, yarn over and pull up a loop. There are 3 loops on the hook, yarn over and insert your hook into the next stitch along. There are 4 loops on my hook back here, and I yarn over and pull up another one. So I've got 5 loops on the hook. I yarn over again, and I'm going to go into the next stitch along now. So I've got 6 loops on my hook back here, and I'm going to yarn over and pull up a 7th. Now to finish the stitch, I yarn over and pull through 6, and then yarn over and pull through 2, and then chain 1. So I've got 2 triptych stitches there. My next one is going to start in the single crochet that I finished this one in, and it'll go over the 1, 2, 3 stitches. We'll do that together, hey? Yarn over, insert the hook, and pull up a loop. Yarn over, insert the hook in the next stitch, and pull up a loop. Yarn over, insert in the next stitch, and pull up a loop. So when I've got 7 loops on my hook and I'm attached to 1, 2, 3 stitches, I'm going to yarn over and pull through 6, and then yarn over and pull through 2 to finish. And then a chain 1, and we move on to the next one. So we'll be starting the next stitch here, which is where we finished this last one. So it'll be over this spot, and this spot. Yarn over, insert your hook, and pull up a loop. So there's 3 loops on the hook, yarn over, go into the next stitch, and pull up a loop. So now there are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Yarn over, insert the hook, and pull up a loop. So now there are 7 loops on the hook. I'm going to yarn over and pull through 6, and then yarn over and pull through 2, and then chain 1. So have a little look. We're just going to keep doing that to the end of the row. Remember that the stitch starts in the stitch that you worked into. Excuse me, my yarn got a little bit caught there. That looked quite awkward, didn't it? Moving on. So we've got a few more to go. I hope that's making sense. If you're not sure where to place that first, your hook when you start the stitch, you can follow the stitch down and it's that one. So if you're on track with the pattern, when you get to the end of the row, your last triptych stitch will be worked, and then we chain 1 as always, and you'll find you've got 1 empty stitch at the end of the row. And in this stitch we're going to place a double crochet, but we're going to place it just a little bit differently. Now if you are a beginner crocheter, you are going to yarn over, look at your work from above so you can see the shape of that V, and insert your hook under it just like you normally would. Yarn over and pull up a loop. There are 3 loops on the hook when you yarn over and pull through 2, yarn over and pull through 2. So as you can see, that finishes the row, but you do have a little bit of a bump. It's not perfectly straight. So if you would like to, and you're feeling confident, want to try something new, what we're going to do is work our stitch in the front loop. So there's that V shape. We're going to work our stitch in the front loop. And once we've got that front loop on the hook, we're also going to work it there. So this little bump here is part of the chain 1 that got us up to height at the beginning of last row. We're going to insert the hook under the front loop and then down under this bump. But obviously we're going to do it while working a double crochet, and it can be a little bit fiddly to get your hook into that, so just be comfortable with doing a little bit of messing about. Yarn over, insert the hook under the front loop and then down into that chain 1 from last row. And I considered editing this so it looked easier, but I think you should see it can be a bit fiddly. So I've got 2 loops on my hook back here, and I have 2 bits of yarn from the front loop and the chain 1 that I'm working into. Yarn over and pull through that to pull up a loop. So there are 3 loops on the hook, yarn over and pull through 2. There are 2 loops on the hook, yarn over and pull through 2. And that has actually created a perfectly straight edge. So if you started with the alternative starting double crochet, the twisted starting double crochet, and you finished by working into the front loop and the bump of the chain, you are going to have a perfectly straight scarf. For our next row, we are going to chain 1 and we're going to turn. And remembering, when we turn, I don't want you to bring this over the top. I want you to bring it under, like that. And that is also part of what will help us to keep our edges perfectly straight, by turning that way before we start a row of single crochet. So we've already chained 1. Look at your work from above. Don't count the loop on your hook. Count this first sort of chain 1, and then the top of the stitch is just here. So insert your hook under the V at the top of that stitch. Sorry, trying that again. Inserting my hook, pulling up a loop, and single crocheting. And by turning that way when we work our single crochets, that's also going to keep our edge super straight. For the second single crochet, you are not going to work into a stitch, you're going to work under and into that chain space. So insert your hook under the chain space and work a single crochet. For the third stitch, we're going to be working into the top of this triptych, looking at it from above, just going under the V of it. So basically you're going to alternate between working into a chain space and working into the top of one of these triptychs. All the way along. Chain space, top of a stitch. Chain space, and then for the next one, top of a stitch. And you'll do that all the way across till you get to the end. Top of a stitch, chain space. Just be a little bit cautious about this. It's easy to accidentally skip either a stitch or a chain space and find that you're 1 stitch short in your stitch count. And I've got to my stitch marker, so one goes in the space between the triptych and the stitch marker. And then regardless of whether you started with a chain or one of the twisted starting stitches, you're going to work your stitch where you placed your stitch marker. And that finishes off row 4. Basically for this scarf, you're going to keep repeating row 3 and row 4 until you think it is long enough. A short scarf is usually about 140 centimeters. A long scarf, anything up to 2 meters. Next step is to repeat the triptych row again. So for the triptych row, I'm going to turn, holding onto this end and turning it over. So if you're starting with a chain, I want you to chain 3, pop your stitch marker into the 3rd chain, and then chain 1 more. If you're starting with a twisted starting stitch, I want you to pull up a loop about as tall as a double crochet, pop your finger on top of that, hold it in place, and wrap it around your hook. Then you're going to insert your hook into the first single crochet of the row, like that. So you've got the 2 loops that you're holding in place on your hook, and then you've got the top of the stitch you're working into, yarn over and pull up a loop. There are 3 loops on the hook, yarn over and pull through 2. You can let that go now. When you yarn over and pull through 2, you finish the stitch. I'm going to grab my stitch marker and mark that. There we go, it'll be nice and easy to find the end of next row. And then chain 1, and we're going to begin the triptychs again. So our first triptych of the row is going to start in the first empty stitch, and it's going to be worked over 1, 2, 3 stitches in the row below. So if you look at your work from above to see the V's, we're going to be working into this one, and this one. Yarn over, insert your hook. There are 2 loops on the hook back here and the top of the first stitch we're working into. Yarn over and pull up a loop, pull it up quite high. You've got 3 loops on the hook now. Yarn over and insert the hook into the next stitch along. There are 4 loops on the hook plus the top of the stitch. Yarn over and pull up a loop. There are now 5 loops on the hook, and we're going to work into the next stitch now. Yarn over, insert the hook into the next stitch. There are 6 loops on the hook back here plus the top of the stitch. Yarn over and pull up a loop. There are 7 loops on the hook, and you can see that we are connected to 3 stitches in the row below. Yarn over and pull through 6 loops. There are 2 loops on the hook. Yarn over and pull through 2 to finish the stitch. Our next triptych stitch is going to start in the last stitch we just worked into. If you have trouble finding that, you can follow your stitch down and find that spot it's worked into. Chain 1, yarn over and insert the hook into that first spot. There are 2 loops on the hook plus the top of the stitch. Yarn over and pull up a loop. 3 loops on the hook. Yarn over, insert the hook into the next stitch along and pull up a loop. There are now 5 loops on the hook. Yarn over and insert the hook into the 3rd stitch along. So there are 6 loops on the hook back here plus the top of the stitch we're working into. Pull up a loop. There are 7 loops on the hook. Yarn over and pull through 6. Now there are 2 loops on the hook, yarn over and pull through 2, and then chain 1. We're just going to keep doing that all the way along here until we have 1 stitch remaining, and I'll come back and show you how to work that final double crochet again. So I've worked my last triptych. I'm going to chain 1, and then in this final stitch of the row I'm going to work a double crochet. So if you're a beginner and you're comfortable with just working a normal double crochet, yarn over, insert your hook under that final stitch, catching the full V of it. So I've got 2 loops back here and the top of the stitch, yarn over and pull up a loop. There are 3 loops on the hook. Yarn over and pull through 2. There are 2 loops, yarn over and pull through 2. And that finishes the row. But if you are a little bit more experienced and you want to challenge yourself, you might notice that this is not perfectly straight, in which case we're going to work our double crochet just a little bit differently. So this is the top of the single crochet in the row below that we'll be working into. And we're going to catch just the front loop of that. And then we're also going to catch this loop at the back of the stitch, which is made by the chain 1 associated with that single crochet. So yarn over and insert your hook from underneath to the top, catching that front loop. And then you're also going to try to push down and catch this chain. So I've got 2 loops on my hook back here, and I've got the front loop and the chain of that single crochet. Yarn over and pull through that to pull up a loop. There are 3 loops on the hook. Yarn over and pull through 2 loops on the hook, yarn over and pull through 2. And I hope you can see how lovely and straight those edges are looking. So all we're going to do now is work another row of single crochet. So chain 1 and turn your work, remembering that we're turning under, not over, to keep those edges straight. We're going to start by putting a single crochet in that first stitch. If you have trouble finding your first stitch, turn your work and look at it from above so that you can see the shape of the V's of the stitches. And we're going to not count the loop on the hook, count back the chain that we just made, and then the first V on the top of a stitch. And that's where we're going to be inserting the hook and working a single crochet. From here, we're going to go into the chain space and single crochet, and then into the stitch and single crochet. Just like row 4, we're going to go into the chain space and then the top of a stitch. We're just going to do that the whole way along. Chain space, top of a stitch, chain space, top of a stitch. At the end of the row, you'll have 23 single crochets. That one with the stitch marker in, whether it is a chain or the top of a twisted starting double crochet, just insert your hook under it and work a single crochet as normal. I'm going to leave you now to just keep repeating those 2 rows until your scarf is as long as you want it to be, and then come back and I'll show you how to finish your scarf off and weave in the tails. Good luck, and if you have any questions, drop them for me in the comments and I'll try and help you out. Finishing it is super simple. The final row is just a row of single crochet, and that just balances it out with the beginning of the scarf. Start by chaining 1 and turning, and all we're going to do is put 1 single crochet in each stitch from the round below. If you have trouble working out where to place that first stitch of the row, turn your work up so you can see the shape of the V's of the stitches. And what we're going to do, having already chained 1, not counting the loop on the hook, we're going to count back 1 V, which is the chain 1 we did to get up tight, and then to the second V, which is where we're going to place the first of the single crochets of this row. So insert the hook under that V and work your single crochet. From here it's nice and easy, we're just putting 1 single crochet into each. I'll leave you to do that and I'll meet you at the end of the row. I have 1 empty stitch left before the end of the row. If for the rest of your scarf you've followed option 1 for the easier version of the pattern, you just need to put a normal single crochet in this last spot. For the straight edge option, we'll be working into the front loop and the chain 1 for this last stitch, similar to how we've placed the last double crochet in each repeating row A. My hook's in the right spot, so I yarn over and pull up a loop, then yarn over and pull through 2. That's the final stitch. To finish the scarf, I'm going to chain 1, grab my scissors, pull the yarn through, give it a bit of a tug so the chain 1 makes a knot, then thread that tail on my needle. If you struggle with threading yarn on a needle, I've got a video with some clever tricks for threading difficult yarn. There's a link up on screen to it now. Let's weave this in. You can weave in on either side. Just check that you're hiding your yarn inside the stitches, so look at the other side occasionally to make sure it's not visible there. I stitch once, then back again, then once more in this direction. I can cut it off really close. Go hunting for any other tails in your scarf. I only have 2 because I use this lovely cake of Panda Crypto, but you may have more joins in yours, so please weave them in too. And we're done, which means you need a new crochet project. I've popped up a link to one of my favourite projects as well as to a playlist of other options. But before you go, if you've actually made my Triptych Scarf, I'd love to hear from you. What yarn did you use? Did you use a solid colour or a fancy variegated? Bye for now.